This is Surviving Your Debut. Um, I'm now the presenter. I'm now the host of this meeting. I have the power. So I'm here to make sure that you don't survive. I'm here to make sure that you do survive your debut. And I am ably assisted by three fellow novelists here. Well, I should introduce myself first. My name is David Levine. I always go by David D. Levine because David Levine is a pretty common name. I started off in short fiction. I sold a bunch of short stories, almost 50 short stories, before making my debut in 2016. I have published 3 novels, and I have written 4 other unpublished novels, and there's one which is sitting on several people's desks in New York right now. But I definitely have survived survived my debut because I debuted, and I'm here to tell you about it. My compatriots here are equally qualified, so I'll start by asking Valerie to introduce herself.
Hello, I am Valerie Valdez. I'm the author of Chilling Effect, Prime Deceptions, and the forthcoming Fault Tolerance, 3 books in a series, all found family space opera, wacky shenanigans ahoy. I am also the author of short fiction, poetry, most recently in Uncanny Magazine, and I debuted in 2019, so pretty recently also, and I've also been doing National Novel Writing Month since 2004. Yikes.
Awesome. Okay, PJ, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm PJ Manny. I write science fiction. My debut novel was Revolution, which was nominated for a Philip K. Dick Award. That let me write 2 more in a series of a trilogy, Identity and Conscience, which I finally finished and is out at the end of this month. Yay! I came from television and movies. I was an executive. I wrote on Hercules' Legendary Journeys and Xena Warrior Princess. I wrote many pilot scripts, none of which got produced. And I can also speak to the interesting differences in your novel debut.
Cool. Okay, I neglected to mention the title of my debut novel, which was Arabella of Mars from Tor. And Tiffany, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm the baby of the group. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. First of all, apologize to my other panelists. I was here just in the nick of time. Me and time zones don't get along. But my debut is actually this past February. It's called A Flood of Posies, released with Black Spot Books, which is a small press. And I like to write about monsters and really mean women. And I have a novella coming out next June, and a couple poetry things in the works as well.
Cool. Well, I'm pleased we have some representation from small press. We are definitely going to be talking about traditional publishing rather than self-publishing here. Bringing out your own first book self-published is an entirely different set of issues, which I am not personally qualified to speak to. I have self-published a short story collection and a few other pieces, but I am basically, when it comes to novels, I'm traditionally published. So the blurb, I will read the blurb. A new novelist's first publication is an exciting time and also terrifically frightening. There are so many things to do and so many opportunities to get it wrong, and the stakes are high. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. 4 experienced novelists share their first-time experiences and offer advice to make your novel debut as pleasant and productive as possible. Does any of you feel called to make an opening statement?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I can real quick. I was traditionally published, but with a small press, and really all I can say is that none of what I expected to happen when I started writing 15 years ago happened. None of it happened the way I thought it would. And I would probably encourage anybody who wants to get into publishing to, have a goal in mind and, have a direction they want to go, but be prepared for it to go like this, and then you get there.
I think you've handed us an excellent opening here.
Yep.
So what are the differences that you encountered between what you expected and what actually happened?
Well, first of all, I thought I would write one book and everyone would go, wow, let's publish it. That did not happen. I actually, the one that eventually got published was my fourth book. And I actually did not get an agent with it. I had lots of agent interest, but my main comment back was, I don't know how to market this, which I know could be a loaded statement. That may be what they say, but there's a lot of other layers involved. But I was sort of working on other projects and I saw an open call for a small press, which is always kind of a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get into with a small press, and it could tank your book, and the press could blow off the face of the earth in 2 years, and whoop, there you are. But I was very lucky to land with somebody who is an excellent press and has done excellent by my book, and I never expected it to go that way. I expected it to be, write one book, get my agent, sell to a big 5 or now a big 4, who knows what's going on, and call it good, and that is not what happened.
Just hold up fingers, everybody. How many novels did you write before you sold your first one?
I have more fingers. I have not enough fingers, I mean, and I have more novels than fingers.
Yes, okay.
It was my first novel that I wrote. Sorry.
Okay, it can happen. But okay, yeah, but you'd written a lot of screenplays.
But I'd written,
yes.
but I told a lot of stories before that. So yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I like to say that the process of writing 4 unsold novels was unfortunately a necessary part of learning to write a sellable novel. There were so many, well, okay, the process of learning how to write a sellable novel is something that I'm sure all of us could talk about for any amount of time, but we're here to talk about the debut part. Okay, so something that Tiffany said made me remember that your path from wherever it is right now to your first publication is almost certainly not going to be straightforward. You may think it's write a novel, get an agent, sell to a publisher, profit. It's not that simple. An awful lot of people never get an agent, get a publisher before an agent, get get an agent but not a publisher, get a publisher but not an agent. I went through 2 agents and 2 editors at the same press before finally getting a contract. That this is an industry made of people, and as such, it's messy. And it's not only an industry made of people, because of course all industries are made of people, but this is an industry in which every product is unique. It's not like this box of cornflakes is exactly the same or as close as we can make it to the next box of cornflakes and the one after that and the one after that. Every copy of the novel is hopefully the same, but every novel is going to be different from every other novel, even from the same person. So your experience as a first-time novelist is going to be different from all of ours. Nonetheless, here we all are. So Valerie, how did your process differ from what you expected?
Yeah, so once, as was kind of described, I figured I will write a book and then I will get an agent and then I will get a publisher and then it will come out and then things will happen, like question mark profit. But yeah, for me it was I had a request from a publisher, sent it in, and then as that was in with the publisher, I was querying agents. And so then kind of like at the same time, I got an offer from the publisher and ended up then going back to the agents and being like, hey, who wants to rep me, please? And then we actually ended up going on submission anyway and went with a different publisher. So it is just a weird stuff that can happen. And then even once you have the publisher, from that point on, what happens can be different timelines with different publishers, different kinds of deals, whether it be a 1 book, 2 book, 3 book deal, whether it's 1 book with option, 2 book with option, or whether they want something in a totally different series for the next book, or it can be all over the place. So just not knowing what to expect can be weird, but having someone on your side as an agent can be really helpful. Or if you don't, then I don't know what happens, PJ. No, throwing the ball to you. How did it go?
Yeah. Got it. So I had what might be the weirdest of of this group. So as a futurist, I had decided that I was writing a novel that would be a multimedia hyperlinked book that would allow you to experience the protagonist's life with this hacked and jacked brain. And I talked to a number of friends in publishing about it, and they all were like, that's a great idea. I just don't understand it. And I thought at the time, and this would have been about 2014, there were only two companies in the whole world that might understand what I was talking about. And that was iBooks through Apple and Amazon Publishing with 47 North as their science fiction, fantasy, and horror imprint. So I put out a call. Does anybody know anyone inside of these companies? Because at the time they were completely black box companies. We didn't know who was employed there. We had no idea what their corporate structures were. They were just black boxes. So I got nobody who knew anyone at iBooks, but I had one friend who had a contact at Amazon, and she was such an early Amazon employee. Her email was her first name at Amazon.com. And it turned out, right, I mean, that's an early Amazon employee. It turns out that she had just been handed the reins of Amazon Publishing because they had fired the longtime editor-in-chief, and they had no books, and they just hired a brand new staff. And my cold query, which never happens, made its way to the science fiction imprint, 47 North, and I got a request. Please send us the manuscript. And they were very excited by the notion of a hyperlinked book and were all in until they found out from their technology division, which is like their skunk works for Amazon, that while they would love to do this someday, it was only available on a Fire, and they didn't believe on selling content that couldn't be sold on every form of Kindle. And I totally get that. So it was publish it traditionally or it's off. It's like, publish it traditionally. So now I had no agent. I had to have an attorney negotiate my deal, but because they were still interested in the future of the book and we were negotiating the contract while this was happening, I have the only contract for the future of the book at Amazon, so that if there, so I will become the boilerplate someday for multimedia books. That's one. Two was after that contract was completed, my editor said, you know, the end is ambiguous. Like, you leave it up in the air. Of course you have other books in the series in mind, don't you? And you have that moment, and I've worked in Hollywood for a lot of years, and it's like, you know, beat. Yes, it's amazing you say that, but they're on cocktail napkins. Give me a couple of weeks to decode the cocktail napkins and come up with a couple of proposals. Well, I had no cocktail napkins, and my editors now all know this, that I fessed up soon after, but they were happy with the proposals, and I then sold those in quick turn after the first contract closed. Mm-hmm. I still have no agent, by the way.
Okay, yeah, this is reminding me of a couple of things that I have been in. I'm 60 years old now. I published my first book when I was 55. I didn't start publishing short fiction until I was 39, but I've been in science fiction fandom as a convention runner and costumer and dealer since I was a teenager. So I have been hanging out with authors since I was a kid. So when I started getting into publishing, I'd already sat in many conventions at many bars, in many conversations, listening to people talk about the issues. So I was already at least baseline familiar with a lot of stuff. If you're starting to get into this, you need to know something about contracts. You need to know what exactly you are giving away, what exactly you are selling, because you don't sell the manuscript, you know, the physical bunch of paper. What you sell is the rights to make certain copies, the copyright, and you sell the right to make copies in certain forms. You may have separate. I mean, these days, hardcover and paperback rights are almost always sold to the same people, but they can be sold to different companies. You can sell the rights to print the paper book, the audio book, any media adaptation. There's the audiobook and there's the dramatized audio. There's media rights, action figure rights, merchandising rights, and all of these things should be covered by your contract. This is one of the things that an agent or a lawyer is good for, is you need to have somebody, and that somebody might be you, who understands these rights
Oh,
and how
I
to
don't understand
how
them
to.
all the way, but I had to do
Okay,
it.
so Tiffany, yeah. So did you Tiffany? Do you have an agent?
I don't have an agent. I actually use the Authors Guild contract review service to help me
Mm-hmm.
negotiate, because I was working with a pretty small press at the time. They've since grown and been acquired, but I use their services in order to help me understand what I was looking at, such as merchandising, such as audio, such as, all those things, such as rights to future works in that universe,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff, especially with the small press. When they kind of will send out these weird boilerplates. Mine didn't, but weird boilerplates that just want to take everything, even though they're not going to do anything with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like you said, it's so very important that you have somebody in your corner that understands, that little period there can change what this means in legalese. And me, a layman, has no idea what that means. So,
Yeah, and a lot of people say you don't need an agent, you need a lawyer. If you do get a lawyer, it's important that you get a lawyer that understands media intellectual property rights, because your realtor, your criminal, your friend who does criminal law, your friend the DA, what have you. Anything having to do with intellectual property has its own weird vocabulary and is just separate from other forms of law. So if you don't know what these contracts mean, you can read them and come to what seem to be very reasonable conclusions about what the words on the page and be completely wrong.
And a good agent is as good as an IP lawyer. I mean, I think that a good literary agent is going to understand exactly all the rights involved, and if they don't, then they need an education as well. Um, for my money, I think the difference between agents and lawyers different. Whereas a lawyer only negotiates, an agent is also guiding your career and guiding
Mhm.
submissions and things like that.
Yeah, I believe that an agent has three basic functions. One is to help shape the book into submittable form. One is to figure out where to submit it. And one is to negotiate the contract once you get an offer. And because I have a long history in fandom, I have friends inside publishers. I did not have any difficulty finding people to send the book to, but I am so glad I had an agent, because my agent got me easily 20% more money than, my agent more than made up their 15% by negotiating me a better contract. They got me contract clauses that not only I wouldn't have gotten if I had asked for them, I didn't even know to even ask. So, okay, but this is all about what happens as you're getting your book into process.
That's right.
And my interpretation of the topic is that we're talking about the debut, which is what happens after the book has been through the whole process of being acquired, being edited, being printed, and now it's going out into the world in either print or electronic form. What is the author's job at that point?
Sorry, I was actually answering a question in the in the chat. Tell me, author's job at which point? I missed the first.
Okay, so as the book is actually coming out, and let's say this starts, say, a few months before the actual debut date, what does the author do while the publisher is bringing the book to the public?
Well, the thing about bringing a book to the public is that different publishers have different interpretations of that, and they have different interpretations depending on the author. So the way a new writer might be treated is going to be different than how Stephen King is treated at his publisher. And a lot of that comes down to how much access do you have to PR and marketing. every company is a little different. For instance, I'm with 47 North. So they see their strength as running Amazon. You know, they're going to position their authors with a more advantageous algorithm, perhaps. You're going to see our books come up on your Kindle with the little ad. But we don't get our books sent into bookstores unless they're Amazon stores, and even then, I only see one or two science fiction and fantasy writers through 47 North on Amazon books shelves. They would rather sell a million Tolkien books than any of their own authors. And then, who are you getting to talk to about your book? That's public relations. So, are they arranging for these podcasts, interviews, blog posts, conventions? Are they putting together panels at conventions? You know, what are they doing for you that might present you to the public better? Are they taking ads out for your things? For instance, Amazon doesn't, because they think the ad on the Kindle is where their strength is. But Tor will take out ads in appropriate newspapers and magazines. So you have to learn with whatever publishing house you're working with where they see their strengths and weaknesses. For many writers, they're told, we're publishing your book. That's about all we're going to do.
Well, and the thing is that when a publisher actually publishes a book, the fact that it is out there, that it is sitting on the shelf in paper bookstores, if you're fortunate, it may be sitting on the shelf in a library. The fact that it may appear in ads from that publisher, even if they aren't advertising your book by itself. My book appeared as, here's our lead title for the month, and also this month coming out these other 6 titles, and
Right.
mine was one of those. Well, that's publicity that I was a small part of a full page ad in Locus or what have you. So the publisher was doing things that I could not do for myself, but I felt that I had to do everything that I could do, and that what my publisher was doing was kind of providing a floor, that any publicity that I could do for my own work would add on to what my publisher was doing for me. So whatever the publisher is doing, people say that traditional publishers don't actually push their books. They do. They don't publish them. They don't push them in the same way that self-published writers do. But they do things to support the book. So Valerie, what did you do? What did you do, and what would you recommend that people do to help push their books?
So for me, honestly, I did mostly whatever my publisher told me to do. So that was pretty much, showing up for different interviews, and I did go to New York Comic Con, which was really cool. They did not pay for me to go to New York Comic Con, to be clear. I got free entrance, but I stayed with a friend nearby. Thanks, Jay. And yeah, so it's one of those things where you have to know kind of what your own budget is for things like that. And it's possible that depending on your position, depending on how much your publisher is supporting you, they will foot the bill for some things. But the odds are that when it comes to things like that, going to cons and making appearances and things, it's more likely that you're going to have to kind of put that together yourself. But they can also help coordinate things like your actual debut. So your kind of coming out party, if you will. You go to the bookstore, you sign copies, your friends come, there's a cake. You must order your own cake. Probably. But things like that are really cool and fun. So you can organize events at bookstores, you can make appearances like this at conventions. I hate to say anything good about the pandemic, but it has meant a lot more online conventions, which has made things a lot more accessible to different authors who don't necessarily have a travel budget or the ability to take time off of work or things like that. And so this has been virtual conventions have been a real boon. When I debuted in 2019, it was kind of like, yay, I went to New York and that was super cool. And then in 2020, I was supposed to go to South by Southwest. and then I didn't because of the pandemic. But then it did mean a whole lot of other kind of opportunities presented themselves, and you do what you can. I will note that studies have been done that unfortunately show that any marketing efforts that you do kind of pale in comparison to what your publishers are going to do. They just have more contacts, they have more resources, they have more ability to have a reach that you don't. Stuff like BookBub and things that they have access to. And so one thing that some folks have started doing is negotiating for maybe lower royalties but higher marketing budgets, and that can make a huge difference. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you can push yourself and push yourself, but in your debut year, when it comes down to it, a thing you can tell yourself is there's only so much that I can do. In many ways, this is in my publisher's hands. I will do my utmost, but do not burn yourself out, because ultimately that's just going to harm you, and the benefit that you're going to see is probably not going to be as much as you would hope.
Thank you. Tiffany, you have had your debut in the pandemic year, yes?
Sure did.
Okay. Did you get a glimpse of what they'd originally planned? Or was your debut late enough in the pandemic that you never had any expectation of anything other than what you actually got?
Well, I was originally supposed to debut in September of 2020, and we pushed that back just because, I'm kind of a small fish in a big sea, and we had a lot of books pushed back from the spring to the fall, and they didn't want me to get drowned there, so they pushed me to February. And then we were also hoping that maybe we'd be able to do some kind of bookstore event or things like that. That didn't really pan out because things are still kind of closed down. And plus, they're kind of saving room for their big, headliners that they know are going to bring people in. And I'm a debut. So it was, I didn't get much of that like traditional experience that, you always dream of. Like, I can't wait like for my cake and, to do the in-store event or the signing or all that stuff. So I do agree with what you all said already. What you can do as an individual is totally going to pale in comparison to what your publisher can do. And I learned that the hard way because I'm obstinate and very stubborn. Um, so I went out, I had bookmarks and stickers made and tried to do a pre-order thing, which did generate some. And I actually had my niece, who's an artist, design them. And they're so beautiful. Like, if anyone wants a bookmark, I have some. They're awesome. But a lot of the stuff I have relied on has actually been my word of mouth and my core crew. The people that I met at conferences in 2018, one of them has a podcast now. I go on his podcast all the time and we chat. I have another one that started a publishing house and another small publishing house, and and I'll talk to them. And so I can't stress enough for somebody who may be going on a smaller route, maybe not with a big traditional publisher, like your people that you meet at things like this are not only going to be your greatest friends. And I'm not trying to say meet people just so you can use them later. Like, they're my friends and I love them and I read their work, and they're my favorite people in the whole wide world. So I'm not trying to give off that vibe, but your word of mouth and that crew and those people that you meet are huge. Also, you have to kind of put aside your I guess, shyness in a way. I went up to my local Barnes and Noble and said, "Hi, do you have my book? Will you carry my book?" And they ordered it, and I went in and signed it. And now there's a little thing on the shelf. It says signed copies. I actually emailed Flights of Foundry and said, "Hey, do you have panelists? I want to be on a panel." So this is my stuff. This is what I've done. And it feels, as writers, we're all just very like, "Hey, it's me, guess what? I wrote a book. We're good friends, right?" Like, it's all right, but you kind of have to put a different hat on for that and be like, "No, I wrote a book. I worked hard on it. It's a good book. Let's see who will let me talk about it."
Yeah, yeah. You reach if you know any podcasters, if you know of any podcasters, reach out to podcasters. Anybody that's printing interviews on their blogs. Anybody, conventions like this one. There are a lot of opportunities for you to put your face and your voice out in front of the world. So let's talk about swag. Um, what did you do in terms of making stuff to publicize your book, and do you feel it was effective?
Hold on. I have swag. I'm like, I wish I'd known. I would have. I'm gonna see if my husband will bring some over. I was very fortunate. My publisher made fridge magnets for me. The bad guys in my book are called the fridge, so it was great. But then also my friend Jay made me bookmarks because I think you can never have too many bookmarks, right? So yeah.
Seriously.
Mhm. I think I did buttons. I was sitting on a panel next to a fairly big name author who had a bag of buttons and spilled them out on the table in front of her, and her readers were coming up and snagging buttons, and I go, that looks like a very good thing to have. So I don't know whether they actually sold any books, but it really made me feel happy to be able to give them to people. Probably the most useful piece of swag I made up was business cards. I made up business cards with my book cover. I was fortunate, I got an excellent cover. Had my cover on the front, and in the back it had my name, the title of the book, and the ISBN. And so when you're talking to someone in any context and you mention, oh, I have a book, they go, oh, cool, what's it called? You can whip out the thing and hand it to them, and then they'll have a physical thing that they can maybe pull out of their pocket at some point and go, oh, hey, that sounded like an interesting book, and they'll go online and buy it. So I think the business card was the best piece of swag that I got. I did a lot of other kinds of swag, but I have no idea if any of them had any positive effect, but I think the business cards did. PJ, how about you?
I did business cards, which I agree with you, and postcards. I find that my readership, because I write hard science fiction and it's not space opera, it's very, near term science fiction. They're not swag folk. And they're not looking for the mug or the plushie or anything like that. They're just not. So for me, business cards were great, as were postcards, which I used for people for bookmarks and collect them all.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, Benjamin Kinney on the Discord asks, how do you approach a Barnes and Noble? I think it was Tiffany.
Yeah. Well, I was absolutely dweeby about it. It was horrible. I mean, it was seriously horrifying. But I went up to them and I said, "Hey, do you have this book?" And they looked it up and said, "Oh no, we don't." And would you like me to order it? And I said, "Yeah, well, it's my book." And this also happened to be the Barnes and Noble that I did my revisions in. So I was like, "Yeah, I actually did my revisions on this book in your cafe." And so I also happened to be speaking to the store manager. I got lucky. And he said, "Well, I'm going to order it. Just you got it, no problem." And then I, being a stalker, would check online to see if it was in stock, and as soon as it was,
I
I
love it.
I carted my butt right in there and I said, "Hi, I'm here. I need to sign my stuff." Uh there it is. And I may make it sound like I was completely confident, but I wanted to cry and leave because I felt so stupid, even though I'm so proud of myself and proud of my book. But it was very hard for me to go, yeah, that was my book. And, look at me. Um,
Hmm.
but I did it because I knew if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. And I didn't do
Yes.
all this work just to, sit back and be shy about it. I need to talk about it, or else who else will?
Yeah. Benjamin asks, who is them? And in my case, when I'm going into a bookstore, you literally talk to whoever, I mean, it's just the same as finding an employee for any other time that you go into a store, is you go up to the front desk, or you find somebody wearing a uniform, and you say, hey, I have a book here. May I sign it? Or alternatively, hey, I am an author. Do you have my book? And just that personal contact with the bookseller, if you make a good impression on the bookseller, they may turn around and say, "Hey, I met this author, and you might like their book." And having signed books is something that I have never walked into a bookstore and had them say, "No, we don't want you signing those books." And I don't know if it's true that signed books can't be returned, but certainly many people believe that, so it can't hurt. I'm trying to scroll. I'm trying to scroll back. I think I saw. Um, did any of you see a question that may have scrolled off the top of my screen?
There was one
That's all.
about, is it common for big trade publishers to, traditional publishers to set up or encourage things like I was describing, or is it all up to the authors these days?
I can answer that. Well, okay. For me, the publisher, and this is 2016, so this is 5 years ago now. The publisher um, set me up with bookstore readings at about 5 West Coast booksellers. I mean, I already had readings set up at my own local bookstore, which happens to be Powell's, because I've known the booksellers there for years. But they also got me set up at the University Bookstore in Seattle, and I think it's Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego, and then a couple of smaller bookstores on the West Coast. They didn't send me all over the country. They did get me, I think, airplane, and but I think everything else was on me. And then I went to a lot of conventions, and that was entirely on my own hook. But that's something that I would have done. I would have gone to those conventions anyway, so that was no hardship. They did send me to the ABA for my first book, and that was great. But for the second book in the same series, that amount of push collapsed down to almost nothing. And I was very fortunate. I think I got kind of high mid-list levels of push. Not as much as George R. R. Martin, but a lot more than some of my friends. So I got more push than some. How much did you get, Tiffany? Sorry, we haven't heard from
Yeah.
we haven't heard from V. Sorry, blanking on your name.
Valerie? Yeah.
Valerie, thank you.
No worries. Yeah, no, I feel like more of what I got was in the order of just kind of like interviews so that I was able to either speak with people kind of over the phone or like this over the internet, or just in writing that I would get questions submitted and I'd kind of be able to type them up and send them back. And like I said, I did get into New York Comic Con, but that was basically just kind of an ask of like, hey, would you think about going to Comic Con? And if you're there, would you like to do stuff? So that was really cool, but it was less of a push for me to do it and more of an ask, I guess. And I think that that's something that you can kind of work with your publisher and they'll work with you as to what you're comfortable doing. And it is important to try to set those boundaries for yourself and for them, because overextending yourself is going to really quickly lead you to burnout, especially if you feel like you don't see enough of a kind of a reward from it. But I feel like getting yourself out there is really good, and you just have to kind of do it in the way that's comfortable for you. Authors will, start blogs or newsletters now. Maybe they'll start podcasts sometimes. Like there's a lot of things you can do, but ultimately you really should just do the thing that you think is cool or fun. If you can, whatever you can sustain is really the most important thing.
Yeah, sustainability is really important. And then you talked about knowing which things pay off. And I think that's a big problem for all of us, is knowing which things pay off. PJ, you're nodding. What do you think? What can you say about this?
Conventions pay off. One of the advantages of being with Amazon Publishing is you have real-time book sales. I can watch books being sold as I speak. It's crazy. The craziest was Worldcon. That was staggering. I sold thousands of books the weekend I was at Kansas City. And this is the kind of stuff where you go, okay, I can actually see how it's paying off in real, actual time. What I wonder about is some of the smaller gigs in terms of booksellers. Very hard for me to do a bookseller gig because I have to bring in the books and consign them myself because no one wants to deal with Amazon, especially small booksellers. And I have really good relationships with local small booksellers, and I've done readings there, and I really enjoy it. But that's something I have to create for myself. Uh, so when Amazon says you want to go to New York Comic Con, I'm in. That is absolutely a really great gig. They set up their own panels with their own writers. I highly recommend that kind of thing. Really, people just want to know who you are and what you write, and they want to get a sense of is this something I want to read? And a lot, ads can do it, but I don't know. I don't know how much other stuff in PR. I'm writing a ton of blog posts right now. It'd be really interesting to see if when, a Scalzi or a Cowell or um, whomever's blog post comes out, if I see a bump in sales. So I'll report back.
I don't have that data. I get my sales information from Tor 6 months at a time and 6 or 7 months late. So I have no visibility as to which things I've done have actually resulted in sales, except when I'm actually physically at a convention where there's a bookseller in the dealer's room, and then I can see that, which booksellers have been selling, and that is a good feeling when you walk past the bookseller and see the space that your book used to be on the shelf. And may we all have that experience again soon.
Yes. I think that's why it's so important to what Valerie said as far as sustainability, because if you're trying to hustle so much to get sales and you really don't know a lot of the things within your reach are going to translate into sales, it's probably better to stick with the things that bring you some semblance of joy, or fill this well a little bit of, I'm so excited to talk to you about whatever. It could be plants, but I'm here and I'm talking about it, and I'm out there putting my name out there. And because a lot of the stuff that I've done has not translated into huge sales, again, being with the smaller press, my sales figures are going to be on a lot smaller scale than the rest of you. So what translates into sales for me could be 20. So, and we're like, woo. So, yeah, just don't try and kill yourself out there. And it's probably in a way been kind of a blessing with COVID, because I know I would be trying to attend every single little thing that ever existed ever, if COVID didn't stop me, and I would have burned out. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and of the opportunities that are presented to you, you need to pick the ones that work for you. Like, I really enjoy going on podcasts and on video, BookTube. I love it. But and I will answer questions for somebody else's blog. But it's like, oh, okay, here's an opportunity for you to write a blog post. It's like,
About what?
yeah, that is just something, if somebody says, hey, you can write a blog post for thus and such, you can write a guest post on thus and such blog, I just seize up. And this is weird because I am a writer and I have written a lot of nonfiction as well. But it's marketing writing. Writing a blog post is not nonfiction writing, it's marketing writing. And marketing writing is something that I have no particular skills in.
But you have to find that ground with marketing writing, meaning, with the blog posts, nobody wants to read you selling your book.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to read is, who are you and what turns you on, and what is it about you that I might find interesting enough to want to read your book? And that's a very different thing than, buy my book.
Yeah. Oh, was it Valerie that talking about plants, or maybe it was Tiffany?
That was me.
Okay, yeah. You talk about what's actually interesting to you,
Right.
and to the extent that there's overlap between that and your book, because if it's something that really is very interesting to you, it's probably going to have something to do with your book. Then that provides a way for you to make yourself an interesting person. The whole point of in-person appearances is to say, look at me, I am an interesting person. You will want to read my book because if you like me, you'll probably like the other things that fall out of my head.
I will be the slight bummer also and say that for all of us, even Tiffany, who is just now debuting this year, one of the weirdest things about this is that by next year, everything we say could be obsolete. Like,
Yes.
I remember when I was coming up and they were like, you need to start a blog, you need to start a blog. Within 6 months, it was, you need to have a newsletter, you need to have a newsletter. And so now I would be like, how's TikTok working for you? Because I don't know how it works. But then it was, you need to have an Instagram. And I'm like, I'm not a good photographer. I don't. But yeah, everyone just kind of like new stuff is going to be emerging constantly. New things are going to appeal to people. There's always going to be the new hotness out there. And so it really is just about figuring out your niche and what you like to do and what you're good at doing.
And
Also,
I can't write a blog to save my life either. The whole idea just makes me break out in a nervous sweat. Like I just cannot handle it. So I thank you for not making me do blogs because it would be bad.
but
Yeah.
just do what you're good at and you enjoy. I mean, that's really the point. And because you only also have so many hours in a day, and guess what? You should be writing your actual stuff, the stuff that you hope to get published next.
Mhm.
You know, you could be doing marketing every hour of every day for the next year. But what's the actual benefit of that? So do what you're good at and you enjoy, and
Yeah.
And
Yeah. If you've signed a multi-book deal, then at the same time that your book is coming out, you have many responsibilities for book two, both writing it and maybe, you know, maybe at this point you're into revisions on book two and you're starting to draft on book three. And even if you don't have another book under contract, you really want to try to jump on the publicity wave of having this, because there's nothing publicizes a book like having another book by the same author, which means that right after that first book comes out, you have a great opportunity to sell your second book because there's a lot, because you're in the public consciousness. So even if you don't have another book under contract, you should be working on your next book while you're debuting your first book.
but may I just add that most publishing houses will not market your second book, not in the way they market the first one in a series. And I learned the hard way about that one, where I got nothing and didn't realize that they were like, no, the algorithms, they're magic, it will work. And it didn't. So I'm now, for the third book, finishing a series, hiring my own PR because the PR worked. And that's something else to think about.
I was
Yeah.
just going to
Yeah.
say
Different.
too, nothing sells books better than more books. So you already said it
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. I mean, think about the fact that even George R. R. Martin, you know, if you look at the curve for the books that he sold, you know, book number one has sold many more than book two, many more than book three. All books, even the most popular ones, have that declining curve as the series goes on. But the thing is, when book 17 comes out, that causes a bunch of people to go and buy book one. So book one will always sell more than two, which will sell more than three, and so on. And basically, you keep going on the series until the most recent book no longer sells enough for the publisher to justify continuing the series. The Arabella books, I had a 3-book deal, and it did quite well, but not so well that they were busting down my doors for more books in the same series. I offered them more books in the same universe, more books about the same characters, more books that are in a similar vein, and they said, no, let's see what else you've got. So basically, they'll keep riding that wave as long as it's waving. But when the wave starts to peter out and slosh onto the beach, then they'll want something else from you. Somebody was asking about how do you do your own swag? Do you make your own swag? I got my business cards from Moo, and my pins from I'm failing to remember that. Where did you folks get your swag from? Did you stand at the copier or?
Staples.
Moo.
I've used Moo and Vistaprint. I've used Moo for business cards because theirs are just the best. They're more expensive, but they are just the best. And then Vistaprint I used for my bookmarks.
Yeah, Vistaprint is good. Moo's business cards are definitely the best.
Very high quality. I think we are out of time, unfortunately. You should probably do the outros and yeah.
Okay. Are we supposed to stop? Are we supposed to
At
stop at
50,
10:50?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So closing remarks. Anybody feel inclined to give a closing remark?
Yes, find a friend who can read your reviews for you and only tell you the nice ones. Don't
Yes.
read your reviews. Don't do it. You're gonna do it. I can't stop you. I know you're gonna do it anyway, but don't though.
Yeah,
That's it.
don't do it. I can't. I second what you just said. Don't do it.
I'm
I did
Valerie
it,
Valdez on
and I
Twitter.
tried.
I had my editor do it for me. I said, just tell me what I need to know that you think will make me a better writer. I can't read it. It's soul sapping. And he's like, okay. And he did.
Mhm.
Ask your editor to tell you what you can learn, but don't read the bad reviews.
Excellent advice.
Mhm. I find that I had good luck with blurbs. As I said, I have a lot of, I am fortunate to already have a lot of friends in the science fiction field. So on my first book, I was able to get a lot of people to write me blurbs. And the thing is, you never can tell who's going to write you, a blurb, because my editor sent the book to Kim Stanley Robinson. I mean, I got Mars in the title, so of course we have to ask Kim Stanley Robinson. And he was like one of those, oh yeah, sure, it can't hurt to ask. And damn if he didn't come back with the very first blurb and the best. Yeah, and we've been on a panel together once. That's the extent of contact that we had. But he gave me an excellent blurb. So you have to ask. You have to ask people to help you, and people will be very glad to help if they can. If as long as they feel like you're asking them to participate rather than using them. PJ, closing remark?
I I just don't read your reviews. Ask your editor to tell you the stuff you can learn from.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree.
Right. Well, we're in Bartholomew B, so any viewers who want to come in with questions, I guess I will hang out in the Discord. So
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to be doing a workshop in 10 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to hang out as long, but I will show up there. So
same.
thank you very much. Thank you for everybody. Thank you everybody for your questions and comments.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes,
and best of luck.
yes. Good luck to everyone out there and on the panel. Good luck. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It's
Bye.
been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.